for aviation. Rear Admiral William S. Parsons, who had been Associate Director of the Los Alamos Laboratory when the first atomic bombs were made, was named Deputy Task Force Commander for Technical Direction. He was the Enola Gay's weaponeer on the historic flight of that B-29 to Hiroshima. Rear Admiral T.A. Sahlberg, Director of Research and Standards in the Bureau of Ships and Deputy Member of the Tolman Committee for Applications of Nuclear Energy, became Director of Ship Material. Major General McAuliffe, who scorned demands of superior German forces for surrender of his embattled 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne, was appointed Ground Forces Advisor. Dr. Ralph A. Sawyer, now Dean of the Graduate School of the University of Michigan and veteran in the field of applied physics, became the top civilian scientist on the staff. Around this corps of men, Joint Task Force 1 was built. The Joint Task Force was charged with determining the effects of atomic explosives against naval vessels and equipment in order that strategic implications might be appraised. The directive further ordered that full advantage be taken of the opportunities to gain information on effects of atomic explosions on aircraft and on Army ground equipment, and that all possible data of scientific value be compiled. Secretary Forrestal authorized retention of 158 surplus United States naval vessels for the experiment. Meanwhile, Fleet Admiral Nimitz had saved important Japanese warships from routine destruction, and a choice of these vessels was offered the task force. The Prinz Eugen, modern German cruiser, was earmarked for the tests. The task force commander was directed to procure administrative and logistic support directly from the War and Navy departments, and on matters concerning the bombs to deal directly with Manhattan Engineer District. Assembly of the task force called for coordinated activity by many agencies of the government, notably the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, State Department, Department of Interior, United States Public Health Service, Smithsonian Institution, Department of Commerce, and the Department of Agriculture. Personnel problems were critical. Highly skilled technicians were particularly hard to obtain. In spite of these facts, Joint Task Force 1 mushroomed into a highly integrated force of 42,000, with a staff that included more than 550 scientists and engineers. The experiments outlined were to comprise the greatest field tests ever undertaken. Because conduct of the tests would be governed by seasonal weather conditions in the South Pacific, a race against time began. The intricate operation was laid out in minute detail by the operations officer for Joint Task Force 1. A planning board met daily to integrate proposals from units scattered over the United States and the Pacific Theater. Even while the master plan was being prepared, preliminary activity was underway at 100 points on the globe, blending coordinated field groups into one great unit. One of the first problems was choice of a site for the tests. The basic requirement called for a protected anchorage 6 miles in diameter in an unpopulated region of the world, but less than 1,000 miles from a B-29 base. The site had to be free from violent storms, must have predictable winds directionally uniform, and predictable currents of great lateral and vertical dispersion. It must have a temperate climate. The site should be remote from fishing grounds, steamer lanes, and inhabited shores, and must be controlled by the United States. After much consideration, a little-known spot in the Marshall Islands was selected. Bikini Atoll, a dot on the map of the mid-Pacific, was destined to become a focal point for the eyes of the world. Situated 11 degrees 31 minutes north, 165 degrees 34 minutes east, Bikini met all requirements, except that its population of 167 persons had to be evacuated and that its lagoon was inadequately charted. Commodore Wyatt visited the island and asked the natives to assist in preserving world peace by allowing their island to be used in the experiments. Even though this meant leaving their ancestral home, perhaps forever, the natives of Bikini were willing to do their share. Family heads selected Rongerik, an atoll 128 miles to the east, as first choice for a place of resettlement. Construction battalion units, with the help of 22 Bikini natives, began work at Rongerik. There were problems of delicate diplomacy in providing just the right number of new houses, just the right number of coconut trees, just the right number of water cisterns. These problems were soon amicably settled, and on March 7th, 1946, King Judah and his people were moved from Bikini and resettled at Rongerik. But the hearts of King Judah and his people are still at Bikini. They live in hope that one day they may return. Bikini Atoll consists of 26 individual islands spread out like beads in a necklace. When the task force was created, the only hydrographic charts available were of Japanese origin. These were inadequate. A new survey of the lagoon was ordered. The USS Bowditch and the USS Sumner, with several other vessels, undertook this survey. Standard sounding methods and the new acoustic bottom scanner were used. Wire drags located horses' heads, obstructions projecting from the coral bottom. While charting continued, troublesome coral heads were blasted from channel areas and potential anchorages. Others were removed to permit submerging of target submarines to desired depths. 40 Japanese mines were located and removed. Navigational markers, buoys, and beacons were placed to simplify movement in and out of the lagoon. The Fish and Wildlife Service of the Department of the Interior endorsed the site for the tests. Fish experts predicted no appreciable damage to fishery resources as a result of the explosions. Extensive tests were initiated to determine the effects of the bursts on marine life. A fish census, before and after, was made at Bikini, to be compared with a control census taken at Rongerik. More than 20,000 fish were taken by hook, net, and seine for comparative study and analysis. Establishment of a system of supply was a major issue during these early days of the operation. To cope with this problem, Brigadier General David H. Blakelock, veteran of amphibious supply projects in the Pacific, was designated Assistant Chief of Staff for Logistics. General Blakelock was responsible for transporting, equipping, and feeding 42,000 men, and for installation of all ground facilities. Logistics for Crossroads was a tremendous task involving trains, airplanes, ships, records, fuel, construction and repair facilities, medical care, and the 1,001 jobs of servicing. Presidential delay of the tests added further complication, but eventually was contrived to afford better instrumentation. Aircraft were to play a key role in the tests. As the adaptability of aircraft for technical observation became clear, the relatively simple air plan originally proposed for the tests was expanded. The final concept of air participation utilized 150 airplanes with units from Army and Navy Air Forces. The primary air mission for Crossroads was twofold. First, to put one bomb over the target and to drop blast gauge and other recording instruments in the target area at the right time. Second, to record the effects of both blasts by instrumentation and aerial photography. An air operations plan which permitted flexibility and perfect synchronization was formulated. The lessons learned from projected practice missions were many. Compromises were made between tactical and scientific considerations. Training of air crews was initiated. At Roswell Army Airfield, New Mexico, an ideal location for practice bombing, a spirited competition began among specially trained B-29 crews for the privilege of dropping the Able Day bomb. This competition continued until shortly before Able Day. The desired bombing accuracy was within 500 feet of the bullseye, an accuracy 4 times better than required in normal combat action during World War II. Numerous devices were used to obtain great precision. These included simulated atomic bombs of correct weight, shape, and size. Among the early results were improved bombing tables and improved calculations for wind components. Photographic and instrumentation equipment was installed and tested. At Clovis, New Mexico, the Army Air Forces began tests to determine the modifications necessary to accomplish remote-controlled landings of B-17 drones, break to a full stop, a maneuver never before attempted. After an interval of training, radio-controlled takeoffs and landings of